Tonight, a heartbreaking reminder that fentanyl continues to be the #1 drug threat here in Florida and across the U.S.
I walked into my son's room on April the 1st, 2020, and found what no parent should ever have to see, which is their deceased kid.
That was one of many parents who attended the DEA's 3rd annual Florida Family Summit on fentanyl today in Orlando. The purpose of the summit was to keep a spotlight on the fentanyl drug epidemic that continues to claim lives. News4Jax reporter Eric Avignon was personally invited to the event because, Eric, you covered DEA operations and investigations.
And I have to tell you, it was a sobering event because for the first time in my career, I was surrounded by so many people who had loved ones that had died from a fentanyl overdose. And some of those victims, you will see their faces in this story. They were not drug addicts, but they were simply experimenting with drugs for the very first time when they died.
In a ballroom filled with local and federal law enforcement officers from across the state who were attending this year's DEA Florida Family Summit on fentanyl, there were also several dozen parents who lost a son or daughter to fentanyl.
My name is Gretchen Murray, and I lost my son, Gage Austin Taylor, almost 2 years ago to a fentanyl poisoning.
My name is Gia Caccaro, and I was quite a different Gia Caccaro almost 4 years ago when I lost my daughter to fentanyl.
My name is Andrea Lee. I lived in Jacksonville for 5 years, and I lost my daughter 3.5 years ago to fentanyl.
Also at the summit was this long row of pictures. These are the victims of fentanyl, victims who didn't survive. Each face has a mom or dad who attended the summit.
Nearly every one of the victims you see pictured here have one thing in common. They thought they were taking one thing, but they were actually taking fentanyl.
There was basically no cocaine in his system.
Tammy Plaxton says her son died after taking what he thought was cocaine, but according to the autopsy report,
He had in his system 1.6, which is like a grain of salt of fentanyl in his body. He thought it was cocaine.
Gretchen Murray says her son Gage was trying drugs for the first time when he died.
He unfortunately made the poor decision to experiment with something, and it ended up being a lethal dose of fentanyl.
The dealer who sold her son fentanyl is currently awaiting trial.
He goes out there every day and he's like, I'm taking traffickers off the street.
Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody was one of the event speakers. When it came to describing nationwide fentanyl deaths, she didn't hold back.
Some might call it mass murder. I think fentanyl specifically should be a weapon of mass destruction. I've called for it to be labeled as a weapon of mass destruction.
But we all know there was a fake pill.
Jaime Porta is the president of Stop the Void. VOID stands for Victims of Illicit Drugs. He agrees with Moody's labeling of fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
We have to understand that last year in 2023 alone, there was more than 75,000 fentanyl poisonings and overdoses in the United States of America. That's 206 people dying every single day.
Porta and other advocates of fentanyl victims and victims' families say despite messaging campaigns to steer people away from harmful drugs, there is a misconception about fatal overdoses that may be preventing people from avoiding the drugs in the first place.
When you hear of somebody who has died due to using drugs, the first thing that comes to mind is that, well, that person must have been a recreational drug user or that person must have been a drug addict. What they don't understand, though, is that for the first time in the history of the United States, this drug is taking non-addicted children between the ages of 14 and 18 years of age and many unsuspecting adults who are self-medicating with these counterfeit pills, and it's taking their lives.
We are in the worst public social health crisis our country has ever seen. And the only way to end addiction, the only way to stop this crisis is to prevent it from starting in the first place. And the only place that we can do that is with our children. Most parents who lose a child to an overdose or a poisoning of drugs state they didn't know, they had no idea. Many don't even know what fentanyl is.
We need to make sure people understand the dangers that these drugs pose to not only themselves, but the children that are around them.
Parents and advocates we spoke with say drug use today is far different and deadlier than when they were teenagers and young adults.
When I was growing up, you could experiment with drugs and you didn't die. Now, you do. It's Russian roulette.
Children are supposed to learn from their mistakes. They're not supposed to die from them.
It's not just disheartening, it makes me angry because there is no reason for this to be happening.
Now, if you or someone you know is abusing drugs and wants help, that help is just a phone call away. You can call the National Drug Help Hotline at the number on your screen. We have posted that number on our website, newsforjax.com. You know, while I was attending this summit, I learned something else from the Attorney General. That is, our state, Florida, leads all other states in the U.S. when it comes to fentanyl seizures, you know, when they have these drug busts and things of that nature. I also learned that, I was going to say that while I was there, you know, fentanyl has been a political hot topic. I can honestly say that during this event, there was no politics involved in this event. Everything
kept it out of it.
Politics were kept strictly out of it.
You know, Eric, I got to say one of the powerful things about your reporting on this issue is that I think it's been so misunderstood. That just what some of those parents were talking about, that it's not drug addicts, it's not people who are using drugs all the time recreational. It can be the first time somebody takes it and then they're gone, which is total tragedy, right?
And you know, true. And what I also found out too is that, you know, when we've done these stories about marijuana, you know, obviously, you know that marijuana is considered, you know, most people may consider that to be a less dangerous drug. We found out today that, guess what, this marijuana is popping up in, this fentanyl is popping up in vape pens, it's popping up in marijuana products. So, you know, when people argue and say, oh, it's just harmless marijuana, just because, you know, they're getting it off the street, you don't know where that stuff came from. Who made it?
The danger's not here, it's up here.
Exactly.
And sitting here as a parent, you know, I know there are a lot of you just like me thinking there is no way that's going to happen to my kids, it's just a reminder for me and everybody else to have that conversation.
And one more point too that came out, social media. Social media, they say, is driving this because kids and even young adults know that if they want to get a specific drug, they're thinking that, you know, maybe it's Adderall or something like that, and not knowing that it's actually fentanyl, they know to get it on social media. And it was described multiple social media platforms where this stuff is just it's just advertised in plain view.
Eric, thanks.